So we are blessed in so many ways, to be living in a time when so much is taking place. And living in a time when we are challenged in deep and profound ways, and yet blessed in others. And I was reflecting about my own life, so much to be grateful for, so much to appreciate, even when I forget and think that my little itty-bitty problems are a big deal. You know, have you ever noticed that? Other people have, that's fine, but when it's yours, it's like it seems a little more amplified. And then you come back to that grounding, centered place that recognizes that we are a part of a divine being, of divine life that is expressing in and through and as all of creation. It is our very life and being. It is that presence which desires our highest good always. And so we have to shift into the awareness of what is true, of what is real. You see, this walk that we're all doing, this earthly journey, where we are spiritual beings inhabiting a physical form and trying to figure it all out. And as I was talking earlier about we all have this capability. We all have I believe everyone has an awareness of something greater than themselves. Now, some people aren't comfortable calling it God, but most people are comfortable with the concept that there is a life that I did not create that has created all. So we in this teaching say you can call it what you want. Call it God if you like. If you don't, call it Father. If you don't like that, call it Mother. Call it Father, Mother. Call it Sam or Sally. But call it, right? And so when we start to move out of some of those conditioned ways that we perhaps were grown up to embrace God as a presence or a person outside of ourselves that rewarded some and punished others and that would find favor with us, to recognize that there's really a presence of divine love, a presence of peace, a presence of wholeness that is always available to us. And so when we start to understand that, then we realize the separation is only in our own minds, in our own beliefs. You see, the challenges that I face in my life are when I forget who I am and I believe that I am somehow separate from the one life that created me. When I forget that there is a presence of love always, that there is a presence of abundance always, that there is a presence of joy always. And so it is not for me to go to pray to God to somehow intervene in my life, but to pray within my own being to open to the truth that is already there. And so we get confused. We walk through this world and sometimes we think we're on our own. We sometimes think that we have to make things happen, right? And then when we start to move into that, then we start to move into the point of struggle. Then we start to move into that striving, into that efforting. I'm always amazed at how easy life can be when I'm willing to let it be easy, right? How crazy is that? But some of us have developed an appreciation for struggle, for efforting, for overcoming, right? And so when we come back to this state of being, this is, we talk about spiritual practice all of the time, and I like to talk about it as spiritual practice because it implies practicing, right? I don't know Daniel well. We're getting to know each other a little bit, but I'm guessing there's some practice that goes on in between just standing up, picking up a microphone and blaring out a Josh Groban song. I don't know. I'm just going to take a leap and say maybe, right? That to be able to perform requires preparation. And sometimes we move into that state where we think when all other options fail, I'm going to go ahead and pray. I've done my best. I've efforted. I've struggled. I'm the type of person, I'm a Leo, so I'm going to blame it on that because you got to blame it on something. So I'm the type of person that likes to, if something doesn't work the first time, then I like to try it again to make sure it doesn't work. And sometimes I'll give it 4 or 5 tries, efforting even harder just to make sure, right? Because, And then that part of me that says, stop, be still. Center into who you are. Listen to the presence of the divine. Listen to that guiding intelligence, which is also seeking its highest revelation. You see, this is such a profound awareness that the divine only wants to express itself more fully through all of its creation. Simple, right? But how profound. I always make this joke about how the acorn doesn't get halfway, become a sapling and go, I don't know if I'm good enough to be a full-blown oak tree, right? It just allows the divine to do what the divine does. Through proper nurturing, a seed grows into its fullness. Through proper nurturing, the God seed within us grows into its fullness. But it would imply that we want to have proper nurturing. And therein lies the carving out the time to be in spiritual practice, the time for prayer, the time for meditation, the time to practice gratitude. You see, we live in a time and in a culture that emphasizes so greatly that more is more. More is somehow better. That if you had more money, or more this, or more that, then somehow life's better. And so you see this kind of constant churning and struggle for people to have more and have more and more and more, and then life is kind enough to give them a heart attack. Slap them upside the head and go, really? And then we go, oh. Or what, right? We have those moments when life isn't unfolding the way we want, and we get to sit down and re-look at what's important, what's valuable, what matters. This practice of gratitude is so profound in just allowing us to recognize the blessings in our life right now, with all of its challenges and all of its blessings. That this is it. This is not a dress rehearsal, as they say. I was reflecting. I don't know how many of you use Facebook, but I have Facebook, and Facebook pops up with these things that happened a year ago, and 2 years ago. So I'm kind of in this series of a year ago's that are popping up for me. And a year ago, October 15th, I had a little conversation with a selection committee at Unity of Charlotte. And I remember that day because it was the day my brother died in the morning. And so I got notice, and then I had this meeting, so we had the meeting, and and they're like, well, we could have rescheduled. And I was like, he would have wanted me to do this. And, that was a blessing. It was a long, painful death. And so I'm thinking about this last year, there's been a lot of change in my life when I think about it. That I used to live in a far-off country, doing a different thing, and then all of the things that have happened to actually come out here and talk to you guys, and we decided, hey, what if you were our minister? I said, what if? And we said, oh, here we are. And then we started running. Christmas and New Year's, and figuring it out, and discovering where our assumptions were. You ever notice that? How you find out where your assumptions are when people or things don't perform according to your assumptions? I always love that. Well, I just assumed, Well, and so you find out what's real And I think about the blessings of this year, the new friends that I've made, this community, all that we've done together, all that's yet to be. I think about, driving across the country, not once but twice, just to make sure it's far, and it is. It's a long way to Utah, it turns out, and, new housing and new pets and new friends, new everything. And all of that also implies letting go of everything that was, and the structures and the ways that I lived before that. And so, when we're going through change, sometimes we forget that there is a grieving process because we are letting go, even when what we desire is coming into being. Change always has a component of grief with it. And we're wise to recognize that and give thanks for it and bless it and release it. And so then I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to go through all this change, I'll just impose that upon this community. We'll just change everything. You won't mind, do you? So we painted and we cleaned and we threw away and we restructured, and everybody's like, oh, what are you doing? Right? And it's good. It's good. And I know it's disconcerting. I know that change is disconcerting. I also know that we are in a time of tremendous change. And when we understand, here's the thing we should understand. We all have a fundamental choice to make. And that fundamental choice is, do I see myself as a spiritual being, or do I see myself as a human being? Because if we make the option of human, it's tough. You're always changing. Little bodies become bigger bodies, then become dead bodies. Just saying, nobody gets out alive. Right? And all that time, every day, our lives are changing, our cells are changing, everything's changing, and we're like, what's going on here? And conditions are changing, and people are growing, and everything around us is changing and evolving and becoming. And if we think that we're a human being, it's incredibly stressful. Like, why doesn't it stop? Right? But when we see ourselves as a spiritual being, we have a place to ground into. We have a way of approaching reality that says who I am. The essence of who I am is timeless and deathless and eternal. The who I am as a spiritual being gets to be that even as all of the forms in my life change and evolve, grow and die, they come into being and they go out of being. Beautiful passage in Ecclesiastes tells us, unto everything there is a season. And wisdom, I believe, is the recognition to realize what season we are in. As I said, our culture would imply to us sometimes that we should always be planting. We should always be growing. We should always be. But if you look at the nature of the season, there is a time to plant. There is a time to grow. There is a time to harvest. And there's a time where the appearance is nothing is happening. In the winter of our lives, it appears as if nothing is happening, but profound things are happening. Our beautiful story of Jesus dying to this life and spending that time in the tomb is not because nothing was happening, but the essence was reforming, reformulating. We will all be given opportunities to spend time. Somebody said recently, I heard, we can either see it as a tomb or we can see it as a womb. We can see it as a time when the appearance of life is not coming forth. The bounty doesn't appear to be so. We want to recognize the season that we are in. It is in those times of winter that we want to go deeper. We don't want to force. We want to go deeper. Even in our metaphysics, can I say this? Turn off the tape. Even in a highly evolved teaching like unity, sometimes we have this implication that if we were doing it right, we would always be happy, we would always be healthy, we would always have tons of money, we'd have great, supportive, nurturing relationships, and even pull off Thanksgiving dinner without flaw or incident, as the case may be, right? And if I could just get my consciousness right. And yet for me, I think unto everything there is a season. The reason we as spiritual beings are on this planet, on this having this experience of earthliness, is so exactly we can experience the growth therein. And so I heard years ago Matthew Fox speaking. And Matthew Fox, if you're not familiar, was a Dominican priest. Spoke of the blessing, the original blessing, it's one of his books, the coming of the cosmic Christ, another. So he's kind of out there of not traditional Catholic teaching. In fact, got himself into trouble, was actually excommunicated for a little bit, ordered to silence. And then when his time was up of silence, his first talk, he said, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, eventually left the Catholic Church because he needed to speak truth, right? He needed to speak to this larger something. But I'll do this series sometime. But one of the things he said, and this was at a New Thought conference, was the thing, you have such a wonderful teaching, such a wonderful philosophy, and such a wonderful way of expanding and being aware of what the Christ is. He said, but the thing that is missing from your theology is the via negativa. There's 4 paths. Maybe I'll do that series sometime. There's 4 paths, and one of them is the via negativa. There's the via positiva. Everything's wonderful. Everything's growing. Everything's light. But we tend to shy away from darkness in our lives. When we can embrace the fullness of this life, and when we're grounded in the awareness of ourselves as spiritual beings, then we are a spiritual being having an experience. Not a good experience or a bad experience. Now it's an experience of joy. Now it's an experience of sorrow. Now it's an experience of health. Now it's an experience of illness. Now it's an experience. But the who we are never changes. So the work, my friends, so sometimes that illness, that slap upside the metaphorically, the slap upside the head becomes the awakening. I've become, as I grow in years and wisdom, more and more of the opinion that maybe we want to do the work prior to the slap upside the head. So we got the skill set in place to deal with the change. I don't know. I'm thinking I might try it in this next 60 years. I don't know. It's crazy. Right? But in all things, we want to be grateful. In all things, we want to give thanks. Even those things that may feel like darkness, even those things that may feel negative, are always a blessing. If we have the wisdom to know who we are and know that conditions change, but the essence of who we are never does. Isn't that good? So the teachings of unity have taught us this. The Fillmores have given us a way to experience this. They've given us a way to begin to train our minds differently, to recognize God in all things. And gratitude is the most sure way to move ourselves into a grounded state, into an aware state. Gratitude is the quality of being thankful, ready to show appreciation for and to return kindness, to experience the flow. Greed, on the other hand, says, gimme, 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 gimme. Gratitude says, oh, there's flow. Let me receive. Let me give. Let me serve. Let me be served. Wow. It's almost like I'm on a planet with 7 billion other people and maybe we're supposed to interact somehow. Don't know. It's a thought. There's a wonderful imam who, Al-Sharif, said, "My heart is at ease knowing that what was meant for me will never miss me, and that what misses me was never meant for me." I remember in one of the conversations a year ago saying, here's who I am. Here's how I do ministry. If you hire me, it will make you uncomfortable. So if you don't want to be uncomfortable, I'm going to suggest don't hire me. If you think that what you want is a nice little pastory kind of guy, don't. We're not a good match. And so for me, I always came to this like, if this is mine to do, it's mine to do. And if it's not mine to do, what a blessing to know that. So here we are, making each other uncomfortable. You're welcome. Right? It's that willingness, as you will hear me say time and time again, that our comfort always, what is known is the comfort zone. It is what we know, what we can expand. And our growth always occurs outside of that. Outside of what is known and what is comfortable. So I choose to bless people that make me uncomfortable. Say thank you. Thank you for helping me expand this awareness. I was thinking how grateful I was for this opportunity to go and hang out with John Stringer and Arlene, and what a wonderful component that was, because I had been experiencing, I've always had an intuitive side. I've always felt more comfortable on the spiritual than on the physical. But I began to experience awarenesses, and many of them were not comfortable. And so what do you do with that? And so that whole workshop was really about just grounding into acknowledging what is. Most of us have this. Most of us have information and it sits right here. And we say, well, this might sound crazy, but, right? And so we discount it, we push it away when we learn to embrace it. And so it just helped me, again, center into one more piece of this, that this is information. I'm not sure why I'm being given it, but it's information. My job is to help uplift the consciousness on the planet and the awareness of who we are. And so additional information is just additional information. It doesn't make it somehow super sexy and special. It's just additional information. But at least I learned to trust it at a deeper level. So this year has been remarkable for me. And I know for whatever reason I'm here doing what I'm supposed to be doing, even when I don't like it. Did you ever do that? Am I the only one that does that? God, show me the way. God shows me the way. I'm like, well, this is not when God's like, oh, it would be so, wouldn't it be awful to be God? Can we just talk about that for a moment? How awful would that be? Prayer. Okay, here you go. Oh, I don't want that, right? So I'm giving up my God complex. It's just too much work. But I do know that life is a blessing, and that it is uncomfortable, and that it is wonderful, and it's joyful and sorrowful. It's the fullness of life, and I don't want to miss any of it. When we move out of that sense of this is good, and this is bad, and this is how it's supposed to be, and this isn't how it's supposed to be, to just say, this is what's next. Who do I become in the midst of what's happening now? What's available for me now? It is a blessing. Close with a wonderful story. Many of you have heard it. But it's about a mother and her daughter and sitting in the airport, and as they're partying, somebody's sitting next to him, and overhears they said to each other, I love you and I wish you enough. I love you and I wish you enough. And so the daughter leaves, and I look at the mother and it's like, I'm sorry, I can't help it, but, this would be me. I'm sorry, I can't help it. I just was eavesdropping on your conversation. And so would you just explain to me? And she said, there's a whole passage around this, but the idea being, I wish you enough. She says, I wish you enough sun to keep your attitude bright. I wish you enough rain to appreciate the sun more. I wish you enough happiness to keep your spirit alive. I wish you enough pain so that the smallest joys in life appear much bigger. I wish you enough gain to satisfy your wanting. I wish you enough loss to appreciate all that you possess. I wish you enough hellos to get you through the final goodbyes. So I wish you enough. Let us pray. As we simply move into that expanded state of gratitude, into that awareness of our very life and being as the life of God, the life of life expressing itself in and through us and as us. And as we come to this simple yet profound awareness that there is not God's life and my life, but the life of God expressing uniquely through me, then I remember, as the master teacher taught us, that the Father's, this power's good pleasure is to give us the kingdom of consciousness, knowing that if we seek this kingdom of consciousness, then everything else is added to us. So we give great thanks today. We give great thanks for those moments of joy as well as those moments of sorrow. We give great thanks for those moments of darkness when we could not see our way and those moments of light when we saw the path clearly. We give great thanks for the fullness of life, for we remember right here and right now we are spiritual beings loving and expanding through this human experience. So we claim for ourselves our divine birthright. That right now, right here, we are abundant beings, for we are participating in a divine flow of life itself, of the source and substance of all good. That right here and right now, we are well, we are whole, experiencing wellness and vitality at every cell and every system, at every level of being. That right here and right now is the presence of absolute unconditional love. And so we open our hearts to truly love ourselves, to love others, to move beyond the appearance of separation, to recognize our human connection, our spiritual oneness. And so how grateful I am for this day and the many blessings. How grateful I am that as we come together in spiritual community, we are reminded of this truth and we are blessed beyond measure. As we recognize our own life as a blessing, we extend that blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet. We're uplifting the consciousness. We're seeing a world at peace. A world that works for all. A planet in harmony with itself. How good it is to bear witness to this truth. And so as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of all faiths. For we know there is but one God, one power, one life, and therefore we honor and celebrate the many pathways to greater understanding, to peace, to love, and to joy. So for all of these blessings and so many more, I simply give thanks. I release this word into that divine law that brings forth the highest good for all concerned. And through the power of the living Christ, I know that it is so. And so it is.